He was born in fire and raised in silence, torn from his mother, sculpted by war, and forged beneath the gaze of men who saw power before they saw pain. They named him Hope and held him to it. Even as the galaxy broke him in half, he walked through ash and called it destiny. He buried love and called it duty. He wrapped himself in armor not to conquer, but to survive. And every breath that echoed through his mask was a scream the galaxy refused to hear. They called him a monster, a traitor, a tool of darkness. But beneath the steel, a man remained, not innocent, not blameless, but human. And in the quiet, far from the battles and betrayals, that man remembered who he once was. The boy he once was died a long time ago, but something lingered. Not light, not darkness, but something deeper. A flicker beneath the rage, a whisper beneath the roar. A memory wrapped in sorrow, waiting to be heard. And when it mattered most, when the stars trembled and the Force held its breath, he chose love. Not as a Jedi, not as a Sith, but as a father. And in that moment, the galaxy was saved. Not by hope reborn, but by hope redeemed. In this video, we are going to explore why Luke was never the true savior, why the chosen one was never meant to rise clean, but to fall completely, and rise again not through victory, but through choice. We will break open the myth, strip away the legend, and reveal the truth that Vader, not Luke, was the hope all along. They told us the boy would bring balance. They whispered of prophecy as if it were law carved in stone. They placed the weight of galaxies on the shoulders of a child, and they never questioned whether their faith was flawed. They never paused to wonder if they misunderstood the meaning entirely. The Jedi saw Luke and saw light. They saw innocence and purity and the chance to cleanse their sins with his victory. They saw a symbol, a new weapon to fight their ancient war, but they never asked if the war needed to be won in a different way. They never asked who truly held the power to end it. They feared the darkness so much they couldn't imagine it being part of salvation. They feared the Sith like a disease, something to cut out and bury deep. But in their fear, they missed the core of the prophecy. Not to destroy the Sith, but to bring balance to the Force. And balance cannot exist without both sides. Maybe it was never about Luke rising. Maybe it was about Anakin returning. Not the boy they trained, not the knight they lost, but the man who still lived beneath the armor. The man who still remembered what love felt like. The man who still had a choice. And in the end, it wasn't Luke who cast the final blow. It wasn't Yoda or Obi-Wan or the ghosts of the old Jedi way. It was Vader, the fallen, the feared, the forgotten, who found clarity in his son's eyes and chose light. Not as a Jedi, but as a father. They never gave him a chance to heal. They never looked beyond the scars they helped create. They trained a child for war and punished the man who couldn't bear its weight. They expected him to be perfect, even when they failed to be present. Obi-Wan loved him like a brother, but abandoned him like a stranger. Yoda warned against attachment. While clinging to broken traditions, the Council treated him like a threat, even when he begged to be trusted. They saw his pain, and chose discipline over compassion. And yet, they placed their hopes in Luke, without hesitation. They gave him the grace, they denied Anakin, they gave him second chances, mentors, protection, all the things Anakin was starved of, all the things that might have saved him. It's no wonder he fell. It's no wonder he searched for answers in Palpatine's lies. The Jedi pushed him to the edge and blamed him when he slipped. They created a wound in the Force and named it prophecy fulfilled. So when Vader ended the Emperor, he didn't do it for the Jedi. He didn't do it for their broken order. He did it for the boy who believed he was still worth saving. He did it for love, something the Jedi feared more than the dark side itself. He was a child of war before he was a child of hope. Taken from his mother, raised among warriors, trained in silence, watched in fear, he never knew peace, only the pressure to be more, to be the one, to be the answer to a question he never asked. And when he loved, they punished him. When he dreamed, they shamed him. When he wept, they looked away. When he broke, they called him weak. The galaxy never saw his heart, only his shadow, only the storm he became. Padme saw him, not the Jedi, not the Sith, but the man. And when she died, so did the last part of him that was truly free. He became armor, breathing in pieces, walking in chains, not by choice, but by grief. Every step he took after Mustafar was a step into silence, a silence that screamed louder than any battlefield, a silence that consumed who he used to be, until only Vader remained, a name, a mask, a myth of terror. But in the quiet of a throne room, as lightning danced around the sun he thought lost, the silence shattered, and the echo of Anakin's name broke through, a whisper, a memory, a promise unkept, and for once, he didn't turn away. What kind of strength does it take to break your own chains? What kind of will must a man have? to rise from the ashes of his own destruction, to face the monster he became, and still choose love. It wasn't just a redemption, it was a resurrection. A soul reborn not by a saber, but by sacrifice. He didn't fight a war, he ended one. Not with power, but with peace. Not with anger, but with clarity. Luke stood before the Emperor and refused to strike. Not because he was strong, but because he believed his father could be stronger. He saw the light others gave up on. He reached for the man others left behind, and in that reach, the Force shifted. Vader lifted the Emperor, not as a Sith, not as a warrior, but as a father protecting his son. And in that final act, the prophecy was fulfilled, not by the sword, but by the soul. Not by the Jedi's way, but by Anakin's choice. And as he lay dying, he looked at Luke with eyes unclouded. For the first time in decades, he was free, not from death, but from despair, not from pain, but from the prison of who he was told to be. And in that freedom, he found peace. The galaxy saw Vader's helmet, not Anakin's heart. They feared the armor and forgot the man. But Luke remembered, and in that memory, he gave the galaxy a second chance. Luke wasn't the hero because he fought. He was the hero because he forgave, because he didn't need vengeance. He needed his father back, not as a warrior, but as a person, as someone capable of love. Even after a lifetime of hate, and that belief, that quiet hope, was more powerful than any lightsaber. It was the kind of hope that doesn't come from temples or titles, but from trust, from the idea that no one is ever too far gone, that darkness can be undone. One choice at a time, because if Vader could return, anyone could. If Anakin could rise from ruin, then redemption was real, not just for him, but for all who lost themselves along the way. That was Luke's true legacy, not victory, but belief. And maybe that's what the Force wanted all along. Not destruction, not power, not legacy, just balance, just choice, just love that defies logic and fear. Love that saves even the ones we were told to forget. But the galaxy moved on, and the myth grew louder than the truth. Statues were built for Luke, and stories erased the man who actually saved them. Anakin became a footnote, a shadow once more, buried beneath the weight of legend. The Jedi returned, rebuilt, but never truly reformed. They honored the symbols, but ignored the sacrifice. They remembered the son, but not the father. They clung to the same blindness that led to their fall, and called it wisdom. And maybe that's the real tragedy, that a man gave everything, and still wasn't understood. That the chosen one fulfilled his destiny, not by power, but by surrender. And the world mistook it for someone else's triumph. But we remember. We look past the armor, past the myth, past the silence. We see the man who burned, the man who rose, the man who chose love when all he had ever known was war. And in remembering, we honor the truth. Vader was the hope, not because he lived, but because he changed, because he dared to choose again, even when everything said he couldn't. And that, more than any prophecy, is what saved the galaxy.